All right, everybody, welcome into Leaning into Leadership. This is a very special episode. This is episode 250 of the Leaning into Leadership podcast. Man, I'll tell you what, when I think back on launching this podcast in January of 2022, I don't know if I would have ever imagined that we would reach 250 episodes. And here we are going strong, continuing to grow, continuing to get better. And tonight, have a very, very special episode for you. This particular episode, I'm sitting down with my two very good friends, Todd Bloomer and Dominic Armano. You've heard them here on the show so many different times, but I'm actually going to turn the episode over to them. I'm going to let them flip the microphones around, interview me. We're going to talk leadership. We're going to talk about, the things that are so near and dear to my heart, things that I'm really passionate about here on the show and in the work that we do. Now, before we do that, I just simply want to talk about our incredible sponsor, my amazing partners at DigiCoach. Let's face it, leadership is complex. Between meetings, management, and everything else that is on your plate, finding time for meaningful feedback can be tough. And that's where DigiCoach comes in. This powerful walkthrough and coaching platform helps leaders simplify the complexity of observation and feedback so you can focus on what really matters, your students and instruction. With DigiCoach, you could collect real-time data during classroom visits, identify trends that you're seeing, and then turn that into information that is clear and supportive for your coaching conversations. Look, it's all about helping leaders provide feedback that's consistent, timely, and centered on growth, not on gotchas. That is what DigiCoach is all about. You see, when your coaching becomes part of your daily routine, that's when everybody wins. Building trust, strengthening alignment, and driving a continuous improvement across your school, that's what DigiCoach is all about. So if you're ready to bring more clarity, consistency, and confidence to your leadership, visit digicoach.com and mention that I sent you for some very special partner pricing. Once again, that's digicoach.com. Tell them that Darrin sent you. Man, fellas, here we go. Episode 250. Welcome into the show, Todd Bloomer and Dominic Armano.
Hey, Darrin, congratulations on 250. What an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
I remember when you first made the announcement that you were doing this, and now here you are 250 episodes later. Really, you need to pat yourself on the back. It's amazing.
I appreciate that, guys. Yeah, it is pretty amazing that we've reached this accomplishment, and it's kind of funny, right? You get started and you hear all these things about podcasts, right? When people launch a podcast, a lot of the research that you'll find is most podcasts don't make it past episode number 10, and so when you get past episode 10, it's almost like, well, I just got to keep going, right? I just got to keep going. And certainly there have been a couple of bumps along the way. There have been those challenges that have occurred, but nonetheless, here we are, guys, episode 250. And I said during the intro that I was going to turn the show over to you guys. So that's what I'm going to do. I am going to turn it over to the two of you and let you take the reins, let you guys take the microphone. And I just became the guest on episode 250 of Leaning into Leadership.
Well, let's go. I got question number one. I'm going to start right off with a banger here. The intro was about the intro was about DigiCoach, and it really talked about simplifying and really making coaching seamless and part of your everyday deal. Darrin, you've been in a lot of schools since you've transitioned from a principal, a recovering high school principal, a superintendent, to now a coach. What advice would you give that current principal sitting in that chair right now, whether it's DigiCoach or whether it's just things that you've seen in the schools that you've been in, to not only make coaching more effective, but making more of it part of their day-to-day operation for what they do in the fabric of being a school leader?
I think that's an outstanding question. And it always comes back to, for me, just as a leader, number one, get clear about what you care about. So often, and I know it almost sounds like almost cliche because I talk about it all the time. I talk about clarity. I mean, that is like my number one thing. Man, when you think about me, when you think about Rodawson, you should think about leadership clarity. And so I would say that's where it starts. Just get clear with what is it that you really care about. Number one, what do you care about as the leader of your school? And then number two, what do you care about when you go in a classroom? What are those things that you are looking for that are like the absolute, I have to have this. I have to see this in every classroom. I was in a school today and we were having some conversation about instruction. And this is a school that has done a great job of identifying what their core values are. But then that next piece was, okay, what is it you expect to see in every classroom? Like what are the things that you really want? And I think the biggest piece of advice I give leaders all the time is know what you're looking for, go in and look for it, and then give good feedback on it. And it doesn't have to be feedback like, well, I saw this, or why aren't you doing this? But rather more have that feedback that's more from that inquisitive level, that level of curiosity where, I noticed this. Tell me more about that. Or why did you choose to use this strategy? Or what was your hope in this particular lesson? Or did your students achieve what you wanted them to? Or even something as simple as, how does a student know they were successful because they were in this class today? I think those would be my two big things that I would say for school leaders. Number one, be clear about what you're looking for. And number two, find ways to be inquisitive.
Can I follow up with something here real quick? I'm a current principal right now. I've struggled in the first semester. It's the end of it's almost the end of the first semester. Haven't been in classes much. Like, what's your advice to that person to take that feedback that you just gave? What do you say to that person? Maybe I'm a first year principal and I was completely overwhelmed. I finally got my feet on the ground. What do I do second semester?
I think at first and foremost, it starts with, what are you doing in terms of taking ownership of your calendar? What are you doing in terms of really leaning into and focusing on what are your priorities? One of the things that I really love to talk about, and my good friend Frederick Buskey talks about all the time, is the Eisenhower matrix, right? It's kind of looking at those four different quadrants, comparing importance and urgency. So often we fall into this trap as school leaders where these things that seem extremely urgent become where we really lean into, but are they really important? And in that Eisenhower matrix, it's kind of this 4-box, continuum of things that are urgent versus the things that are important. And if it's really urgent and really important, those are the things that you should be leaning into. But those things that are urgent but not really important, those insignificant things, those are the things that I think school leaders have this tendency to chase after. You guys have both been there. You've both done that. You have people come to you with things that seem like the most important thing in the world. And maybe they're important to that individual, but are they genuinely important to your work? Is it something that somebody else can manage? Is it something that maybe isn't even really urgent with those individuals? So the thing that I would tell school leaders who maybe in the first part of the year, they're brand new administrators, they got stuck in this world of firefighting. I would say, sit down, categorize everything that you do. Maybe even take little Post-it notes, make a poster with the Eisenhower matrix on it, and then just start writing down everything that you have chased this semester and start placing it on that Eisenhower matrix. If it's neither urgent nor important, why are you wasting your time with it? If it's urgent but not important, who can you delegate that to? And the things that are truly urgent, truly important, or even things that aren't necessarily urgent but are genuinely important, that is where you need to spend your time and figure out ways and systems specifically that can help you push those not important things off on somebody else so that you can focus on what really truly matters.
It's excellent advice.
I think that's great. And I kind of want to segue into a question here, Darrin, for you. So like obviously anyone that knows you, listens to the podcast, Road to Awesome is all about building school culture and giving advice to administrators and leaders, right? It's hard to believe. I look back at my own career. I'm 13 years in as a school administrator, and I'm still learning from my mentors and friends, people I call colleagues, So here's a question I have for you. My own philosophy is I treat my people well. I treat my staff well, right? what does your personal support system look like? And then how do you protect your own well-being and avoid burnout? Because one of the things that I have come to learn and the mistakes I've made in my 14 or 13 years is that sometimes I take it all on because I want to protect everyone else. And then I'm the one that's now feeling like I'm underwater. So, any advice to talk about that? I think I threw a
Yeah.
curveball there, Darrin. I'm sorry.
No,
Great
you did.
question.
It's a great question. It's an excellent question. And I'm curious, Dom, I'm going to answer your question with a question. Are you asking me in my current role, or are you asking me in my role when I was a principal?
I'm going to go with role as a principal.
Okay. All right. No, that's really good. That's really good. So I would tell you as a principal, once I kind of got my head above water, and of course that was working with a coach and having support, those types of things. My biggest support system, the biggest way that I was able to stay focused, in quadrant 4, urgent and important, was leaning into my secretary. She was probably the single most important individual for me in terms of being able to just stay focused on what truly mattered. I think anytime, if you're in a school leadership role or any type of a leadership role, if you're not leaning into somebody who can help hold you accountable, somebody who can help manage your calendar, somebody who can, kind of run interference for you, then that's when you're going to struggle the most. I was extremely blessed with Marilyn as my admin assistant. She was the one who you guys have heard me talk about, the balcony level leadership, where I would go over and check in on my priorities, on a pretty regular basis, once or twice a month. She was the one who would put it on my calendar, and I didn't even put it on. And I'd say, Marilyn, why is balcony on my calendar? And she'd say, you need to get over there and get back focused on your priorities, because you're not focused on your priorities right now. So that's number one. I would say number two, you have to have somebody on the outside, somebody who's not inside of those walls. Dom, you talked about, you're still leaning into your mentors. I worked with a coach for a few years, but I could still reach out to my coach years later and just, out of the blue, I could call him and just say, okay, Tom, I'm struggling with something here. Can I pick your brain a little bit here? Or did you ever come across this? I remember very well as a superintendent going through, that entire COVID period. And there were 3 or 4 other superintendents who had been superintendents a little bit longer than me that I could simply pick up the phone and just call and say, I need a little guidance here. Tell me a little bit more about this, or have you come across this yet? Because this is one of the things I'm struggling with right now. You have to have that network. If you don't have that network of people that you can lean into and just say, man, I need your help, that's when I think you're going to struggle the most. Leadership is a role that can be so isolating, especially if you allow yourself to be isolated. For me, it was really important to lean into certain people. And then honestly, as I'm reflecting on your question, I'm thinking about this handful of classroom teachers that I had that I would just go to with, very specific things. One of the teachers that wrote for my most recent book, Culture of Earth Classrooms, Tanya Torpy. Tanya was one of those teachers that, she was my special ed department head. And there were times that I just went over and said, Tanya, I gotta talk to you about something. I'm struggling with this. And it may not have even been a special education issue. It was just simply, she was somebody I knew I could trust. Other teachers that I had in the building were probably, 6, 7, 8 different people that at different times I could just go and sit down and have a conversation with. And then certainly not to gloss over this one, but man, you got to have that person at home. My wife was somebody that always I could lean into, still to this day. So if you had gone the other direction and said, no, Darrin, I want you to tell me about you as an entrepreneur, what's your support system look like? Jess would have been included in either of those two spaces, because sometimes you just need the safety of home. You just need to be able to come home. You guys have this too, Todd, you with Sarah, Todd with Sharon and Dom with Sarah. You guys can just come home and just say, all right, look, I just need to unload, or
Yeah.
you won't believe what happened today. And, those types of conversations without that person at home for you to be able to lean into. And it doesn't have to be a spouse. I mean, it might be a friend, it might be, a parent, whatever it might be. You've got to be able to lean into those people. And then the last one I'll say, I'm I'm an advocate for podcasts, not just because I host one. I listen to podcasts all the time, and I'm always picking up on little pieces here and there that help me be just a little bit better.
That's awesome. That's
It's
awesome.
great. It's great free PD that people just need to take advantage of. And Darrin, you
Yeah.
host a great podcast. Your last podcast talking about NAL and athletics was absolutely amazing. You
Yeah.
talk about a lot of great things. And so whether it be your podcast or somebody else's, I firmly agree. Darrin, hey, there's a lot of assistant principals that listen to your podcast out there. And a lot of them are thinking about two things. They're thinking about, am I in the right spot? Is this what I signed up for? Because this is not what I thought I was going to be in.
Yeah.
So my question's twofold. What do you say to them? Okay. Like, what's your advice to that person right now that is coming home at night doubting what they're doing? And then what is your advice for that person that's thinking, I'm ready for the next step? So it's two totally different questions. And you can go either way at whichever one you want to riff on longer. But let's start with the one I think maybe to say, like, hey, I'm really struggling right now. And I pick up the phone and I call you, Darrin, I say, hey, I'm thinking about quitting, going somewhere else. What do you say to that person?
Yeah, I think those are two fantastic questions, and I'm thinking about a conversation that I had today in a school that I was at, and in this particular school, the AD, he's been in the role a couple of years. He's doing a phenomenal job, but last night home event had that situation, high school home event where the parent that was just out of control and you can't get them back. And ultimately the police had to have the person leave and some of those kind of situations, right? And listening to him talk and there was never any, I don't think I'm in the right job or anything like that, but just asking him to reflect on the situation. And so here's the question I ask him, and the question that I would of any current assistant principal who's maybe struggling a little bit would be this: in the time you've been in the job, what have you learned about yourself as a leader? Because sometimes we get kind of stuck on here's the things that aren't going well. I had a parent who I just had to serve with a no trespass warning, or, I had this kid who I really thought I had turned them around and they dropped out, or, I have this whatever, right? We all have those situations that come about, and, we can't control a lot, but when we stop and we reflect and spend a little bit of time on who am I as a leader and how have I grown as a leader, it's an opportunity to kind of reframe and think about where am I right now? And then ultimately, where is it that I want to go? Because especially early on, and we've all been in that role, we've all been the assistant principal. There's zero control as the assistant principal. You have the duties that you have. You're given the opportunities that you're given. And even in, a recent conversation with another principal who talked about, we were looking at some data, some staff survey data, and he talked about how, well, there's a change between this year and this year. And yes, I was here, but I was the assistant principal in this year, and I was kind of following that person's lead, where in this year, I'm the principal. And so there's a little bit of a difference in terms of how I chose to lead my building. I think reflecting on what we've done, what we've accomplished, and what we have learned about ourselves makes a big difference. And it gives us the opportunity to, again, get up on the balcony and think about the trajectory that I'm on as a leader. Maybe this first 4 months, especially this is my first year as an assistant principal, maybe this first 4 months has not gone the way I wanted it to. Maybe I really wish that I hadn't suspended this kid or said this to this teacher, or, behaved this way, or I shouldn't have put that on social media, or whatever, right? We all make mistakes. And when you're early in your career, odds are you're going to make more mistakes. But when you have that opportunity to kind of take a pause and think about, okay, what are the things I've learned? That gives me an opportunity to now think about, okay, am I on the right trajectory? Over the last, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks, I've been in a bunch of schools. I've had a lot of virtual calls with almost every leader that I coach. By the end of this week, I will have sat with every leader that I coach over the last couple of weeks in one way, shape, or form. And I'm asking every single one of them the same 2 questions. One, tell me 3 things that have gone well this first part of the year. And then the second question, tell me 2 things you want to focus on when we turn the page into January. I think, Todd, we can get into this defeatist mindset. We can fall into the, boy, this isn't going the way I wanted to, or to the second part of your question, I'm ready. I can't wait to jump into the next role. Thinking about those pieces, reflecting on how you've grown as a leader, I think helps set you up for, here's where I want to go. Here's what I think I can accomplish, and maybe reset that personal confidence a little bit.
It's excellent.
That's great. That's great. I want to follow up with a fun question, okay? Because you got me thinking about my days as an assistant principal. And I remember there were so many days that I left with a smile on my face, and so many days when I was driving home going, why did I do this? So here's a fun question for you, okay? If you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one administrative task from your desk, what would it be and why? And I know there are many assistant principals out there probably having a list of about 10 that they would love to eliminate.
Yeah.
But what would you take off your plate if you could? Just goodbye, see you later.
I think probably most people would immediately go to discipline or attendance or tardies, right?
That's what
Yeah. I think I'm going to go a little bit different direction with this. I think in reflecting in general on all of my years as a school or district leader, if I could remove anything, it would be the formality of evaluation. If I could do away with the report I have to file or the paperwork I have to do and just make evaluation what it should be, conversations, discussions, how can I help you grow? What are some things that if I could bring this to you would help benefit you the most, those types of things. I mean, there's a whole ton of, man, I wish I never had to deal with this, or I wish I wouldn't have done that. If you've ever heard me talk about being a recovering high school principal, I say things like, I don't miss, chasing people down, reminding them to go to lunch duty, or, going to IEP meetings, or, goodness knows I don't miss high school dances, those kinds of things. But in truth, evaluation without all the bureaucracy would, I think, be really, really amazing to just have conversations about how can I help you grow? How can I help you get better? How can I support you the most? And just take that layer of, I don't know, thoughtless accountability out of there. Just okay, we checked the box. Now we've done that. If I didn't have to do it that way and I could just simply, let's talk about how we can get better. I think that would probably be the thing that I would want to do most.
I think that's great. I think it that matches perfectly just with your philosophy, about, putting people first and culture and support. And I think that's amazing. I think it's a great answer.
Darrin, real quick off the top of your head, it's December. You're going to have some principals stepping away at the end of the first semester. You're going to have some new principals taking over in January. Advice or 2 you'd give a new principal starting in January?
Go buy the blueprint. It's a great book. It will help you.
Let's go.
Get ready for leading with swag. It will definitely help you. Buy Road to Awesome. No, in all seriousness, although I am serious about those will both, all 3 of those books would certainly help you. I would say this, if you're getting ready to step into a new principal job here very, very soon, don't allow yourself to get too hung up on all the bureaucracy, on all of the guidelines, the accountability, and that kind of stuff. First and foremost, build relationships with your staff, especially if you're brand new. If you're brand new into that building, you didn't transition from the classroom to somewhere else, just get to know your people. Don't feel like you need to completely turn the school around overnight, because first of all, That's not possible. And two, even if it was, it would be done because you built relationships. So really lean into getting to know who your people are, understand what the context is of where you are, understand a little bit more about the community now that you're a part of. Even if, like Todd, I was just in San Antonio the other day with you, and, you could be, in the Winston Churchill High School community, but that's different than the whole San Antonio community, right? I mean, every school community has its own subculture from within the community. So don't make the assumption that just because you're in a different school that the culture is exactly the same. You need to get to know the people. You need to get to know what they're all about, what it is that their hopes are, what it is that they're looking for, and then do everything you can to just listen. Don't make any commitments. Just listen and say, okay, you know what? My time really starts this summer. The rest of this school year, just about getting to know everything about what is going on, get to know all the people, learn what they're good at, learn where they can grow. And then that's where your leadership begins.
I had the opportunity to start Winston Churchill High School in January. And if I could recommend that to everybody, the train's already set sail. It's already moved. And just what you said, Darrin, getting to know people, getting to know structures, systems, taking notes. Absolutely awesome. Before I kick it over to Dom, I need you to share some love for the great city of San Antonio. Just here this weekend. The weather wasn't the best while you were here, but what's a takeaway or two from the city of San Antonio that you loved?
I would tell you the downtown San Antonio area, even during a 5K and setting up for a marathon, is an incredibly walkable area. I really, truly enjoyed being in the downtown San Antonio area. I would tell you the Pearl District is breathtaking, just absolutely beautiful. Todd lives right across the street from it. That guy's got it. He's got it pretty well figured out. He really does. But a lot of people will talk about the Riverwalk, and they should, because the Riverwalk is incredible. And, you can just walk along the river in so many different ways and so many different, capacities, getting to all different kinds of places. The hotel that I stayed was about a 5-minute jog from the Alamo. And of course, if you follow Bloomer, you know that Bloomer will regularly share videos and photos from the Alamo. So yes, I took a selfie in front of the Alamo and sent it to Bloomer. But I would tell you this, even though the weather was not perfect in San Antonio when I was there, it was a wonderful time, easy town to get around in, and incredibly friendly people. I texted you about this, Todd, but I get in my Uber on Saturday morning to head to the airport, and the wonderful lady, Dom, you'll love this story. The wonderful lady who picked me up, her name was Julie. She just asked, why were you here in San Antonio? And I told her, and she's like, did you get to do anything fun? And I said, well, got to do a couple of things here and there. And then, I had I had dinner with a friend the other night. He's a retired principal here in the San Antonio area. And he was at Winston Churchill High School. And she said, you mean Bloomer? And I said, yeah, I mean Bloomer. And she's like, my daughter, Unique. Unique loves Mr. Bloomer. She just thought the world of him. He made such a difference in helping her graduate. And we ended up having a 10-minute conversation about Bloomer in the Uber on the way to the airport. And I have a feeling, and I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that there are a lot of people around San Antonio. If I dropped Todd Bloomer's name, it would have been very, very similar to my conversation with Julie. So there's my love for San Antonio. It was fantastic. I'm excited to come back. I'm certain that I will have the opportunity to come back. In this case, obviously, speaking a couple of times at a conference, I'm pretty sure I'll be back in San Antonio again.
Well, Unique was not only unique, but unique kid. So it was funny that she was, her mom was the Uber driver. So small world after all. But, Darrin, if we went to Omaha or Wyoming or Arizona, and Dom, if we went to any part of New York, we get lucky. We get lucky every once in a while by doing a good job and coming across good people and championing them and supporting them and loving them.
Very true.
And making them feel special. It's just nice when people acknowledge that. Darrin, thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
It's awesome.
That's great. Do we have time for another question? Because I feel like
we'll go one more. Yeah.
I have this urge to stump you, Darrin, but I don't think I'm going to. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something a little different. Okay. I'm actually going to be a guest on a podcast coming up in about a week or so. He's another Road to Awesome author, Rob Wadawa, who's a friend of mine from up here in New York. And so shout out to Rob, but he kind of gave me a list of topics or questions that we're going to like discuss on the podcast. And one of them that he gave me was, it stumped me. And I want to ask you, Darrin, and obviously I thought about this question. I know, Todd, I think you were on his podcast recently. So, but I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to answer it because you have to tune into Rob's podcast to hear it. But here it is. Ready, Darrin?
Yeah, let's go.
Would you rather mentor a teacher who's an incredible relationship builder, but struggles with deadlines, or one who's highly organized, but struggles to connect with kids? So I give
Yeah,
a shout out to Rob Wadawa. I don't know if he's
It's a great
listening, he
question.
might, but
it
I'm
is.
throwing it out there. Go ahead, Darrin. Take it away.
So excellent attempt at stumping me, but I've already been on Rob Wadawa's podcast, so I've already answered this question. I think I was guest number 1 or 2. So
I didn't listen to it.
yeah, there you go. So got to do your homework, Dom. But I think, well, here's the thing. I don't remember how I answered the question. So I think what I said then and what I definitely will say now is I would much rather lean in and mentor a teacher who's not maybe super organized, but is really good at connecting with kids. I was in a school today. I mentioned that, and we were having some conversation about a handful of teachers that this particular leadership team is, they've got some challenges with them. They've got some work to do to help them grow, and all but one of them, it's kind of this piece, or, maybe we need to do a little bit more about expectations or whatever. But nonetheless, it was always, they connect well with kids. They connect well with kids. And then I think there was one where it's, but man, just really struggles to help kids, or, struggles to build relationships. And I think back on, all my years as a school leader, and the teachers that I had the most difficulty with were the ones who simply couldn't build relationships with kids. Maybe you're not real strong at setting expectations, or you need some help with developing routines, or, maybe sometimes you forget, oh yeah, I got to get this, this stuff graded and get it back to kids, give them some timely feedback. But man, you build great relationships with kids. The kids love you. They know that you love them. Man, if you've got that, I can help you build systems. I can help you develop systems, because here's the thing. You guys have heard me say this before. I've said it on this show countless times. You're uniquely positioned to help the person you used to be. That's who I was. I was not the most organized individual. I always had piles in my room. I could tell you, I knew where the piles were. If you want to know where something was, I could go right where it was. But I wasn't the person who had the color-coded files, or, the color-coded calendar. I'm not that person. But could I build relationships with kids? You better believe I could. I was really, really good at that. And probably still to this day, I am. But I would rather work with that person because that's who I am. And I know what works for me. I also I struggle with how do you help somebody who can't build relationships with kids? That is a tough piece. And I mean, you can give little tips and, those kinds of things, but yeah, I would much rather work with the person who's just, man, I can't get my paperwork done, because I get that. That was always me.
Yeah. I think you answered it perfectly. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to answer it, but it definitely stumped me. It definitely stumped me. I was like, but relationships is, I can't stress this enough. I think all of you, Todd, Darrin, I think you would agree with me 150,000%. Relationships is the most important part of this job. And if you don't have that or can't do that, that's a problem. It's
going to be a very difficult job if you can't build relationships with kids.
100%.
And we as professionals, we can help them, as Darrin said, and I think that's 100% there. Darrin, that our time is just flying by. If I could take a line from your podcast, our time is just flying by. And I'm going to ask you what we ask every guest on our podcast to end our podcast. How are you leaning into leadership right now?
See, Dom, that's how you stump me right there. That's really good. I should have seen that one coming. Man, how am I leaning into leadership right now? I will tell you, I happen to tell you, I understand now how everybody else feels on the other side of this question when I ask this question. I would tell you the number one thing that I am doing to lean into leadership right now is identify each and every possible avenue I can to pour into other leaders. Throughout the course of my career, I have had other leaders that I've had the opportunity to learn from, to be mentored by, to align myself with, both of you two included here, that I learn more about leadership from every time I'm with them. And I think for me, leaning into leadership is just pouring into every single person that I possibly can, whether they carry a formal leadership title or not, to help them discover who that leader is inside of them, to help them be clear, to help them be intentional, and to really walk in their purpose as a leader. So very much off the cuff, I'm going to say that's how I'm leaning into leadership right now.
You're doing an excellent job of it too, DP.
Yeah, really, you're doing great. That's great.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that a lot. All right. Well, I'm going to take the show back over right now. That was that was a lot of fun, guys. I really, really appreciate that so very much. As always, both you guys just mean so much to me. Everybody listening, everybody watching on YouTube, thank you so much for being a part of this journey here on Leading into Leadership. 250 episodes down and a whole lot more to go. Thank you all for joining me and Dom and Todd here on Leading into Leadership. Get out, have a road to awesome week.